Hey everyone, have you been wondering how you can knock out that death pile that's been holding you back on eBay? Well, this is the show for you. We're going to talk all about some great strategies for how to do that and how to get rid of all those items that are probably hiding over there in the corner. So welcome to the Prof Sales YouTube channel. I'm Prof Sales.
And I'm Karin.
And we are glad you are here. So this channel is all about reselling, being an entrepreneur, your mindset, being in business for yourself, and just really taking control of your financial future and destiny. So we are really glad to have all of you here in the live chat with us today, as well as those of you who will watch this later. You can leave us a comment, leave us a question, and we will do our best to answer it. So Karin, what would you call a death pile? This term.
Dun, dun, dun. It's very ominous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So we should define our terms. Do you want me to read your definition or define it as it
Sure, you can, and then you can give your take on it if you like.
The Webster's Thrifting Dictionary defines death pile as a large assortment of unprocessed inventory that is not being utilized in your business to produce profit. Is that good?
I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So long story short, this may be the big pile of stuff that you have over in the corner, the pile of stuff that you have in a closet, pile of stuff you have in the trunk of your car, the pile of stuff you have in a trash bag.
That pile of stuff that you're putting the plant in front of so you don't have to look at it anymore. The pile of stuff that's hung in the closet but pushed back into the corner behind the big winter coats so you kind of don't have to, the whole out of sight, out of mind thing.
Right. And you guys, I mean, a lot of people who watch this show and watch this channel are YouTubers or sell on Amazon or Poshmark or some of the other sites that are out there, Etsy. And a lot of people that I've talked to in the past couple years have mentioned this idea about death piles. I got this big pile of stuff and I don't know what to do about it. So we're going to try to tackle that today. And I hope that, what we're going to there's going to be a couple ground rules for this.
Okay.
And the first ground rule is you cannot beat yourself up over this. You got to stop doing that. And the other ground rule is you can't ignore it.
Yeah, the first step to this 12-step program is admitting that you have a problem. But we're not going to beat ourselves up. We're going to address it, and we're going to see how we can move forward from it. Agreed?
Right, right. So I just want to say, I'm going to give you a few reasons here why having a big pile of stuff that is not listed or not able to be sold easily, why it's hurting your business. The first one is you're tying up capital that's not producing profit, nor is it allowing you to purchase new product. We all have a limited supply of money, a limited supply of capital. Our business makes money, we bring it in, we buy new stuff, we spend on expenses, we pay ourselves a salary. But it's a limited, finite amount, right? You cannot just keep buying forever because you run out of capital. So when you got all this money tied up in capital, think about it this way, guys. Those are literally dollar bills, $5 bills, $10 bills, 20s, hundreds, whatever you want to think about it, sitting there that you cannot spend.
Yeah, you can't make it if it's just sitting in the corner for sure.
It's like having a big box of money in your house locked up really tight that you can see, but you can't actually go and use it and utilize it. And the worst thing is it's your money. You put that money into that pile, into that box. You spent the money to make that bigger stack of money just sit there and do nothing for you. So that's the first reason. The second one is not dealing with your death pile. It might indicate that your processes for your inventory and how you handle it are broken or just inefficient. And if you process this death pile, if you get rid of it, that will help point out any flaws you have in your system. We were talking to somebody this past weekend, and he was talking about his death pile, his big pile of stuff he has, and he had a very small amount of items listed compared to how many he had bought, how many he had sourced. And that indicates that he's not really probably utilizing his capital effectively because he's putting capital back into new product, but he's not getting it listed quick enough to really take advantage of it. So that's maybe a flaw in his system, just on the face of it. The third reason your death pile is really detrimental is mentally. This might even be the worst one, Karin.
Yeah, I think so too.
Don't you feel like people, when they look at that big pile of stuff, they just feel, what do they feel?
it's just like, how on earth am I going to get to all of that? I only have an hour, or I only have whatever until I have to go get the kids or go to work or whatever.
Yeah.
And the bigger that pile gets, it's like the further away we want to push it. Even though instead of looking at that pile like this big pile of whatever it is for you, you know, hard goods, clothing, shoes, whatever, and sort of put on your reseller glasses and look at it like those are dollar bills stacked up there in the corner, right? Like if you're going to see the world through rose-colored glasses, why don't you see them through these reseller glasses instead? And no matter how big that pile gets, it's just money that's sitting over there. And I think that when it's really big like that, anything that's daunting like that,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want to do it, because the bigger it gets, the harder it must be.
Yeah, and how big a death pile is all kind of subjective based on your personal situation. So it's not about a specific number, but I would say that, you know, tagging on to what Karin just said, it can be a source of anger. It can be frustrating. It can make you sad. You can deny it. Like, it has a mental aspect to it that I think people forget about. And one of the things I was talking about this weekend with some people at our reseller meetup, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is that people, your perception of what you're buying matters. Because when I hear, and I'm kind of a reseller grammar Nazi, when I hear people say things like, I need to go shop for more stuff. Shopping, I know that they really mean sourcing, but when you say shopping, that tends to indicate a personal attachment to the items you're buying. That they're for you or for someone in your family or someone close to you, or a gift. And they're not. They're not. They're items, they're inventory. So if you can think about it in terms of, I'm sourcing inventory for a business rather than shopping for items that are going to sit in a pile, that even just that mind shift can help you, because you're not shopping, you're sourcing. And there's definitely a difference. I gave the example of someone this weekend. I said, you know, if Goodyear, the tire company, bought enough components to make 10,000 tires, right? They bought the steel, the rubber, all the things that go into a tire. They wouldn't just let those sit there and decide, hey, there's an even better deal on another 10,000 tires worth of material. We're going to go buy that and not worry about making that first 10,000. No, they're going to go make those tires because they have to, because that's how a business works. Yours is no different. When you buy something and you don't list it in a timely fashion, or maybe ever, you're not really in business. You're buying things for yourself to make yourself feel good or some other reason.
Well, and you know, another piece to this psychological component is that we hear from a lot of folks that, you know, they're doing it on their own. You know, maybe they're married or they have a significant other or family or whatever, and nobody understands what they're doing. Nobody understands the work that goes into it or anything.
Right.
I guarantee you, if your death pile becomes big enough that someone else that you're cohabitating with notices, that's not going to help either. You know, like, we want respect from the people that love us. But if most of what we do in our business is the sourcing part, and I get it, we cover it all the time. We do what's fun. That's the funnest part for most people. But if that's all you're doing, stop.
Right. Right.
And we're probably going to talk about it later in the list, but we've all agreed that, you know, we're not going to beat ourselves up, but let's all also agree that if you've got a death pile, stop sourcing.
Right.
Really.
Right. So I think that I'm gonna give you guys a formula, because some of you might be wondering, do I really have a death pile, or just do I have some things to source? And I'm going to give you a formula. Here's your little bit of prof math, and I came up with this. So the formula is this: if you have 1,000 listings or less on eBay, anywhere from 0 to 1,000, if you have more than 20% of that sitting in your house or your inventory, so let's say you had 1,000 listings, that would be 200 items, you have a death pile. If you have 100 items listed and you have 20 items sitting over in a bin, you have a death pile. Now, you may not look at it that way and say, well, it's only 20 items, Prof. You're right. But compared to how many you have listed, it's a big percentage. It's 20%. So 20% is a number that most people can wrap their head around very, very easily. And I think as you tier up, as you go up, I even think once you get over 1,000 listings, you need to cut that down to 15%, that threshold, because 150 items sitting there that you haven't listed is costing you probably $1,000 a month in sales. It could, even in clothing, and in higher end stuff, it would cost you way more than that. So 20%, guys. So look at how many listings you have right now and on eBay, and then look at how many items you have sitting over in the corner and wherever it is that you keep your items you haven't listed yet. You can approximate if you want, take a guess at it, but be realistic. Don't look at a whole bin full of stuff and say, oh, that's 5 items. It's probably a lot more than that. If it's more than 20% of your listing total, you have a death pile. And if you do have a death pile, there's some steps you can take to deal with it.
Apparently I was ahead of the game there.
Yes. So let's talk about the steps, because I think it's not an unconquerable problem, but I think if you view it as in a certain way, it will seem that way. So
the first one.
Karin's going to do number 1 about the solutions.
So is that number 1?
Yep.
Okay. So so assuming you're going to use the formula, number 1 is admit that it exists. Admit you have a death pile. Admit you have a problem. Resistance is futile. No. Denial is useless. It really does you no good.
Not just a river in Egypt.
No, denial. Okay, can you wanted to do that one, obviously. Go ahead and say denial is. Okay. So useless to be in denial over the fact that you have it, right? So just admit it. Let's address it.
Let's admit it, right. And the second one is probably the most important part of this solution, guys. Number 2, don't beat yourself up over this. We touched on this a moment ago. It's happened. You've bought it. You had intentions, whatever. What you do next, though, is going to define how you perceive this pile of stuff that you have. But you cannot beat yourself up over. There's no point now. Like, that doesn't help anything. But admitting it exists is important. But then the next reaction for a lot of people is, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible. I have a problem. I buy too much stuff. I don't list it. I'm terrible at business. I'm not able to list. Like, all these weird set of statements start going through your brain. And then all of a sudden you're like, you just get depressed. And there's no reason to do that. But what's number 3, Karin?
Come up with a plan. And that's certainly what we're all here to help you do, right? Your plan can look like any number of things. I know the most obvious, right? You need to list your thingies.
Right, we'll get to that.
But you could bulk the items and sell them locally. Identify items which may not be saleable or not as profitable as you thought, and donate items for a possible tax benefit.
Right. So rather than sit there and think, I've got to list through all these, and that is the next part of this solution. But you could get rid of these in bulk. Like Jennifer is in the chat today. Hey, Jennifer. And we saw her this weekend. And she mentioned that since she's been on the Reseller Rehab show, she's now down to about 100 items from her death pile, which is great. Tremendous progress.
Yay.
And I asked her about these items. And she said, they're older. I wasn't as adept at sourcing back then. I'm not sure how profitable they all are. I told her, I said, you know what? I would donate them and get rid of them. This point, I would say, you know what? I would take my losses on it. You might have some tax benefit there. Talk to your tax professional. But I told her, I said, instead of focusing on it anymore, just go ahead and get rid of it. You're going to like the benefit you get from being clean and ready to go with moving forward is worth more than any profit you would get from having to just, piecemeal those out. So if you guys are out there and you had a pretty significant death pile and you get a lot of tchotchke stuff, you're not sure about it, consider donating it, bulking the sale locally, get rid of it, guys. Like, spending all this time on listing it now may or may not be worth it. And from a mental standpoint, it's probably not worth it.
It feels so good. Donate your stuff. Set it free.
Set it free. And that brings us to number 4. And this is the one you all already know. Grind it out and list it. But you got to do it in manageable chunks. If I told you, as someone we talked to this weekend, if I told this person, they had about 1,000 items in their death pile and only about 150 items listed. Now that's a pretty far skewed ratio, right? I said, oh, if I went to them and said, well, yeah, dude, just list those 1,000 items. Well, this person has a full-time job. You know, they have a full-time job, they have a family. That seems overwhelming to most people. Like, that's a lot of items to list. You know, if it's, especially if it's just you, which it is for most of us. So here's a formula I'm going to give you guys, like a way to do this in a manageable chunk. All right. Break it down into percentages. All right. So let's say you got 100 items listed and 50 items unlisted in your death pile. Divide 50 by 100 and you get 50%. Now that's greater than our 20% threshold. So you have a death pile if that's your number. Your goal is to get 1%, take 1% of your total items listed and unlisted and get that many listed in 1 week. Just a week, not a day, not an hour, a week. Because you need to give yourself a manageable goal. So going back to our example, if you have 50 items listed and 100 items unlisted, 100 items listed and 50 items unlisted, that's 150 total items. 1% of that is 1.5. Round it up to 2, and that's your goal. Your goal is to get 2 items listed in 7 days. Just 2. Start with 2. If you feel like doing 3, knock yourself out. But 2 is non-negotiable. Like, that's your floor. That's the minimum amount you can do, and that's for this first week.
And is that in addition to the normal stuff that they do? Or that's just period? It's
just minimum. You got to do at least that. You got to do at least that. And if your number is below 1 for your percentage, make sure you do at least 1 in this coming week. That's a very manageable number, guys. If I told you all you need to do to get ready your death pile is list 2 items a week, that's pretty manageable. Like, that's, for a lot of people, that's a half an hour, you know, at most. So 2 items would be your goal in that. If you have 500 items listed and you have 150 items that are unlisted, that's still a death pile. That's 30%. So 500 plus 150 is 650. So 1% of that would be 6.5. So you would need to get 7 items listed this week. Just 7. That's it. And now that's a pretty simple formula, but it takes into account step number 5, which is critical. Karin,
this is my favorite. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Yes, I know. If you have this death pile, the number 1, it's number 5, but the number 1 thing is do not buy anything else until your numbers are in line. Nothing, zilch, nada, not a thing, period, no exceptions. And I've got my librarian glasses on. I'll know if you did.
Yeah, guys, this is critical. And I know what some of you are going to say, because some people said that to me this weekend. But, you know, there's great deals here, and this store has a great sale this day, and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. You've got items. You've got inventory that is costing you money.
Yeah.
And you need to go take care of that before you go buy anything else. I mean, nothing, zero, zilch. You've got to get this under control, guys, or this problem will compound and it could get worse and worse. And you could wake up one day and realize you have more items unlisted by far than you have listed, and you feel like you have no hope and you have no money. You have no money either. That's the thing. Like, you will run out of money if you just keep sourcing, and you're not listing. You do not have an infinite sourcing budget, guys. Buying something because it's a good deal sounds an awful lot like a shopper, not someone who's sourcing. Like, that's a shopping mentality. You buy something because you can make a profit on it in a reasonable amount of time for the amount of money you're putting in. And it presupposes that if you buy it, you're going to be able to list it and get it prepared to make that profit in a reasonable amount of time. Buying it because it's a good deal and you could make profit on it 3 years from now, if you get it listed in, that's not smart. That's not a business mentality, and that will drive you right out of business and keep you from succeeding on eBay or any of these platforms. So number 5 is really critical. Do not buy anything else, nothing, until you get your number down under 20%. Number 6 is take stock of where you're at in 30 days. Give it a month, 4 weeks, basically. In 4 weeks' time, you'll have knocked down, you know, some percentage points off of your pile. And you're going to notice some other things are going to happen to that, which we'll talk about in a moment. But if you do this for 4 weeks and you knock down at least this percentage point, at least 1%, but it might be higher than that depending, then you're going to see progress. Like, you're going to see your listings go up and your pile go down. And then what did they get to do, Karin, after they see that? Number 7.
Number 7, glasses on. The benefits of this approach is that your death pile will start to shrink. We promise. Your listings are going to increase. And you know what's going to happen next? Are you ready for this? Are you sitting down? Profits will increase as you will sell more. And you'll also feel mentally what? Refreshed.
Refreshed. True story. We know that as you list things, you're going to sell more things, right? And it's not always a 1-to-1 ratio, but it's definitely going to go up. And that's going to be nice too, because that's going to put more money in your pocket. But you're not going to take that money and go and buy just more and more items. All right. That's not the way this works. So you've got to make sure that you take that money and just hang on to it until you get this death pile under control. Don't go buy a bunch more stuff. Someone said to me this week, and they said, well, I'm not really getting ahead on my death pile, but I'm making enough each week and each month to replace what I already bought. But that doesn't really make sense when you think about it, because that's not going to get you ahead. That's going to keep, and by the way, that doesn't make you any money. That's just making you enough to buy more inventory, which a big chunk of it's sitting over in the corner doing nothing for you. So do not go out and just buy more things when you start selling more things. You still got to get this death pile under control. But I think if you do this this 1% approach minimum each week, and I said each week, guys, some of you guys could do this each day if you wanted, whatever makes sense to you. You could change the number too, but don't make it crazy. Don't say I'm going to list 20% this week. I mean, you're probably not going to do that unless you just really grind away at it. And I'm not sure that's healthy for you. I think a manageable goal that you achieve is better than a pie in the sky goal that you have very little chance of achieving. I think that's always a better approach. You're going to feel better about it, and you're going to make progress. So I just think that if people do these things, Karin, I think they're going to see a big difference in their death pile and just even their business and their mindset. Totally agree. Because it's one of the common threads, one of the common thorns even that we hear from a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of funny what somebody said. 71 items listed and 5263 unlisted. Well, that's quite a few. That would clearly be a death pile if your ratio is like that. But someone I talked to this weekend had 150 items listed and 1,000 items unlisted. And that is like a way out of whack ratio, guys. And I'm not calling them out to make them feel bad. It's not about that. But that's the kind of mentality it's easy to get into when you start thinking, oh, well, this store has a sale on this day, and this is a really good deal this day, and so on. I mean, there's other things that go into this about how you could set up a schedule to go source. That I highly recommend as well. Don't leave it to chance. Don't just say, I'm just going to source this week. Nope. Set a day, set a time, set a block of time, plan a route. Those are all really smart things that will keep you from overbuying as well, because some of us in the eBay community, guys, are overbuyers. And I got to tell you, I see it quite often. It's easy for people sometimes to get emotional about things they buy. Don't be emotional. This is business. This is not, you can be emotional and passionate about being in business. That's great. But being emotional and getting emotional to something you buy, getting attached, that's a shopping mentality. That's something different. It's not a business mentality, and it really doesn't have any place in an eBay business. And it'll hurt you. It'll hold you back. So, sorry. That's all right. Jennifer even said that that's what she's done now. She picks a day, and that's the day that she sources. Yeah, yeah. And to someone else's point, I can't remember who it was, but there will always be great buying opportunities out there. And just because you missed this one, there's going to be tons more that are going to come along. You're not going to miss them forever. And it doesn't matter. You've already bought great things. They're sitting there on your couch. They're sitting there in your closet. Take care of those. Your goal here is not to buy things. Your goal here is to sell things. And you can't do that if you're just buying. Like, I really think, Karin, the more I think about this, that a lot of people's challenge is not that they don't list things or they don't photograph things. It's that they buy too many things. They spend too much time buying and not enough time doing these other things.
Agreed.
And that's how the death pile gets started.
Agreed.
And once it's started and starts growing, it can almost take on a life of its own.
Yep. And I think it almost involves some reprogramming, right? The thing that makes you feel good about it is the thrill of the hunt. I get it. You're out there in the moment, or you're on Craigslist or whatever, and you find this deal and it's such a good deal. I have to go grab all the thingies, right? But if you save $10 or $20 or whatever you save acquiring said item, you know, how long is it going to sit there? And how long is that's going to affect your ROIs, right? Your return on your investment. So if it's just going to sit there indefinitely, you're not necessarily realizing what you've saved. You're not profiting from what you thought by saving that money. So start to reprogram yourself. You know, Tiffany talked this weekend about when you sell on eBay in particular, to be really good at it and consistent at it, you have to have a passion for it. And that passion is just not only about the sourcing. That's just a part of the business. And if you get into a routine where you're acquiring your items, you're processing them, you're listing them, photographing them, whatever, it all becomes a feel-good moment.
Right.
Because how many people have been in the middle of a Goodwill in Columbia, South Carolina, and their phone goes cha-ching, and it's like bells and whistles and confetti's going off in the air, and there's a rush to that, right? I think that arguably that cha-ching, you know, Pavlovian as it is, that's a pretty cool thing too, right? Oh, and in addition to that rush we get, we're making a little money at the same time. So.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I know too that, like, you know, we think about, I know some of us struggle with, like, say, eating, for instance, but it would be rare to just go to like a restaurant and just keep ordering entree after entree after entree after entree and not eating them. You know, and that's kind of what this whole mentality is. Like, I'm just going to buy thing after thing after thing and not sell it. Because really what you're doing is you're buying without any real intention to sell. Because the buying is making you feel good. You know, this reminds me of something, and there might be a similarity. They did this study about gamblers' brains, people who gamble versus, and people who are addicted to gambling versus those who can go and just, you know, spend a few bucks at a casino or something, or lottery tickets or whatever, and not, you know, have any issue with it versus people who actually had an addiction to it. And they found that they showed them this video of like a slot machine. And they showed the slot machine running and running, and then these 3 cherries would come up, and the bells would go off, and then it would light up, and it would indicate a win. And the people who were addicted to gambling, they got rushes of endorphins in their brains, just as did the people who were not addicted to gambling. They both did. Now they showed a similar video, but it came up, and they would get like 2 cherries across and then something else, and it was not a win. The people who were not addicted to gambling got nothing, no endorphin rush. The people who were addicted got the same endorphin rush. Losing was just as entertaining and just as much of it hit the pleasure center in their brain, just like winning did. That was the difference between the 2 groups. And I think for some of us, when we go buy things and we get a good deal, even though we never list said thing and sell such thing, I think that's almost like the person getting the, you know, almost a win. Because it's not really a win at that point. It's not a good deal. It's not something that's profitable if you never list it and sell it. So, you know, I don't know if that example is totally applicable to everyone, but I think there can be something to that in our brains sometimes, that we think, you know, the thrill of the hunt. I don't have any thrill of the hunt. I just go out and it's like, if things are good, great. And I've got the capital to buy them. But if they're not a good deal, or I know that I could hardly ever list them because it's so far out of my niche or comfort zone, I'm not going to buy it. Or it's just like, or Karin will say to me, hey, we're going to source today. And I'm like, no.
And it comes out just like that. No.
Yeah. Like, no, it's not a thing. So you got to find ways to be passionate about this, guys. It's not about buying. It's not buying all the thingies. that sell all the thingies.
We think it is, but we get into trouble, and you're going to get into trouble, especially those of you that are new, right? If you're just about grabbing all the thingies and buying all the thingies, at some point you're going to run out of all the monies. And then you're going to run out of space, and you're not going to be able to buy more thingies. And then what happens when you're outsourcing and you really do find a good deal? Oh, but yesterday I just happened to stop by on the way to the post office to do XYZ, blah, blah. And it wasn't scheduled, but I thought I would do it anyway. You know, nobody likes discipline. I get it. But if you can just give yourself a little, it's going to pay off.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting you can't go sourcing, but if you have a death pile, as we defined earlier in this video, do not source. Nothing. Zero, not a zilch. Like this is one of these rare times I'm going to put an absolute number on it and say, if it's over 20%, you know, your unlisteds versus your listeds, that ratio, don't source. Don't buy anything. Take care of what you've got first. Once you get it down, then you can go back out. But I would try to cut it in half. Like if you're at 20%, I would try to get it to 10 before I even sourcing that. I wouldn't wait till I wouldn't start, oh, I'm at 19, now I can go. Nah, I'd get it down pretty low just to make sure that you really have a grasp on this idea of what it takes to buy things, list things, and sell things on eBay, because you really have to do all three of those.
Right. And here's some cold, hard reality, especially for people that are brand spanking new to selling online. How many times have we been contacted by or run into new resellers, and they defeat themselves even before they get started?
Right.
So many new sellers are failing before they even get out of the gate, because they're acquiring all the thingies. They're buying all this stuff. And if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do for all that stuff, then guess what? You're not only a non-reseller, but you're a non-reseller with a big death pile.
Yeah. You got a big pile of money just sitting there doing nothing for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how to, I guess I could use my mom voice, but it's kind of serious. We joke about how it's the thrill of the hunt and, you know, all this, haha, look what I found. But it can be serious. And there've been some jokes in the comments about, you know, hoarders and hoarding. And have you ever seen that show? And it would probably make you.
Right.
But there is some truth to that. And no, we're not saying you're becoming a hoarder, but get a handle on it. Because if your goal is to make money, you are not making it if you're just buying the stuff and piling it up over here with the intention that someday I'm going to list it.
Well said. All right, guys. So there's some tools for how to handle this idea of the death pile, so to speak. And I hate that term, but when I use it, everybody seems to know what it is. So, all right, so let's talk about some other things here. And by the way, if you guys have questions, it's a live chat going on during this video. Please leave them in the chat box. Type the word question or 2 or 3 question marks in front of your question so we know that it is a question. We'll be glad to answer it. And it can be about anything. It can be about this subject that we already covered, or it can be about other things as well. But we had a great meetup this weekend, did we not, Karin?
That's 2 in the books, and this last one was amazing. Like every time we do them, every time we do them, we think of, you know, where we're going to go next and how we're going to do it better, if that's even possible.
Right.
But it was amazing. Yeah, it was really cool. We had a great time. You missed out if you weren't there. There are some people in the chat though that were, so there you go. Yeah,
we had our second reseller meetup in Columbia, South Carolina. Tiffany was our host. We had a smaller turnout this time than our first one, which actually ended up being pretty cool because it really enabled us to engage with each other a lot and, you know, have a lot of fellowship together and dinner time. You know, we were there for lunch as well, and able to really kind of see how each other, you know, sources and buys things and runs their business and all these things that, you know, it shows their product knowledge. I mean, things that are a little bit tougher with a larger group, I think.
And, you know, we made plans on, you know, how we're going to communicate differently next time and how we're going to approach it. It was amazing.
Mike says, do death pile items have to be accounted for in your Schedule C? All right. Well, I am not a tax professional, so do not take this as professional tax advice because it is not. But generally, items that are not sold are inventory and an asset of your business. They're not an expense. You cannot treat them as an expense for the most part. So they have to be accounted for that way. They're just like cash in a way, is how the IRS looks at it. Well, that's probably not a great example, but it's an asset. It's not an expense of the business. It only becomes an expense once you sell it, which is another reason to get rid of the death pile, because it's not helping you at all. But as always, talk to your tax professional for your own specific situation, because I am not that professional. People are saying we need a West Coast meetup. That would be cool. It's just a little tricky for us to get there. Since it's
I don't know if we were invited. That's
hey, well, that's messed up. You can't not invite us on our own channel.
that's Joe and Skip going back and forth.
Oh, they're doing their own thing. All right, well, they can do their own thing.
Maybe we could come and see them. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I was already in Skip's town and he didn't come see me.
That's true, Skip. So we're calling you out right here on the channel.
We could have had a West Coast meetup.
There you go. And speaking of Skip, he asked, if you buy an item and have it cleaned or repaired, is that an expense or is that a cost of goods? I think that would actually be an expense. Then you sell it. Probably an expense to the business. But talk to a professional on that one, Skip, because I'm not totally sure. But I feel like that's probably an expense, not a cost of goods. Cost of goods is usually anything that you specifically incur to sell the product. Cleaning and repairing is a little bit iffy in my mind, but I'm not a pro, so I don't know.
I could see where it could go either way.
Yeah, it could be a cost as well, but either way, it's going to be it's going to be something that comes out of your pocket, out of the business. So
right, you're still gonna write it off somewhere, but I think the difference is going to be, Skip, where you apply it. Like, does that repair or cleaning cost get worked into the cost of the item, or are you just going to eat it as part of the business? And I bet you that has something to do with where it lands. But again, consult your tax professional.
Yeah, and Fashion on Fire says, I'm afraid I'm going to miss all the coats and sweaters coming out right now. Well, the reality is, Fashion on Fire, you probably are, if you already have a pile of stuff, that was your opportunity to get ahead of the game. So if your processes are broken and you're not able to get a handle on your current death pile, quote unquote, what makes you think that it'll be any better for the sweaters you're going to go buy right now? It's not any more likely that you're going to list those if you weren't listing those things or had a process to deal with those. Like if you're buying 50 items a week, let's say, and you're only able to list 2, you're slowly but surely just gaining more and more items. And it's not like all of a sudden you discover, well, there's a great deal out there right now. If I go take advantage of that, now I'll start listing them all and getting a handle. No, you won't. Like, you got to get a handle on that before you go into a new area or you buy something for a new season. There's no evidence that you're going to be any better at, and I don't mean you personally, there's no evidence that you're going to be any better at listing something you buy right now than something you listed 3 months ago or you bought 3 months ago that you haven't gotten listed.
Well, and you run the risk of, if you're branching out into coats and sweaters now and you haven't before, not only is your existing death pile going to just sit there, but now you're running the risk of making it bigger.
Right.
Stay strong, DJ.
Yeah, I mean,
been working on death pile for 2 weeks now. I'd be curious if you knew your numbers, like put this formula into it, what your numbers were 2 weeks ago versus what they are now.
Yeah, and as you list more and more things, your death piles as a percentage of all your items, if you're continually working from that pile, it's going to get lower and lower just by definition, because you're increasing the numerator, you're increasing the denominator of the fraction and decreasing the numerator. So it's going to get lower and lower, that percentage, just by listing things, which is great. And you're going to make more profit. You're going to sell some more things too. So it's always going to be in flux, but don't get too hung up on that. When an item fits 2 categories, say sweater and top, how do you decide which one, or is it best to pay to do both? I would say it's not best to pay to do both, nor would I say list it in both. It's most likely one or the other, or seemingly one or the other, or seems to fit one category better. And I would pick that one because, if you're going to put, like, it's a sweater shirt, which there is such a thing, that's probably a poor example. If you put jeans pants in your description, your title, that's a little iffy, because now it's almost like you're keyword stuffing somewhat your title, and you're trying to get people looking for pants and people trying to look for jeans. You got to be careful doing that. I would try to figure out which one it really fits into and list it there.
And just be specific in your title, because that's where it's going to pull from more than anything. So, you know, Levi's, women's size, blah, 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 jeans.
Right.
And leave it at that. And that's funny. That's immediately what came into my head. That would, like, shirt,
Jeans
sweater
pants,
would be like us doing jean pants. And
yeah. And they do have sweater shirts. There is such a thing. So I backed away from using that one because there is such a thing, which is always weird to me too. It's like, pick one or the other.
Yeah, pick, commit.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Sorry, Mom. We're in a different location here today, and I think it's affecting my sinuses or something. It's weird.
Oh, it's my perfume. That's what you always blame it on.
It is. It is. So what else we're going to say about the meetup?
You can check something off your Trello list because we got a present from Jennifer.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was funny. We actually got magic erasers basically from Jennifer, which was on my list of supplies. So not only did we get the magic erasers, we also were able to check it off of the list. But Trello has been working really well, and having a schedule. Like I have a schedule, my whole day for today is scheduled out. And just, you know, being able to know that, guys, having like this idea that, all right, this is what I'm doing today. This is what's important. Like I've already figured it out. I don't need to like come up with it on the fly. I'm telling you, I mean, I know there's going to be those of you out there say, I'm better spontaneous. And I'm going to say, I don't know that you are. I mean, because most people, when you come up with some sort of plan, I'm not saying to every detail, but when you can make a plan, like it forces you to really think about it. And that's what's so great about having a plan for your day, for your week, whatever. Not so much that you're micromanaging your time, but just the idea that you have to think about what you're going to do instead of, well, I'm just going to get up today and be productive. That doesn't make any sense. You know, that's sort of pie in the sky. Who knows what I'm going to do? And, you know, it's better when you can get up and say, I'm going to do these 3 things or these 5 things or whatever. Just like it's, I'm going to list 1% of my death pile. I'm going to get 1% done this week by the end of the week. Not, I'm going to work on my death pile. Well, okay, but what does that look like? How do you know if you succeeded or not? And you're not going to know that unless you come up with some sort of a schedule and so on. But
well, you know, in the JCs, when you make goals on your planning guide or whatever, goals have to be measurable, and measurable goals usually have numbers attached to them. So working on my death pile is not measurable. Listing 2 items, listing 5 items, listing 10 items from my death pile, definitely measurable. And it goes back to the Trello. Put it on your list of things to do. And then when you do it, put it over there. Reward yourself by self-badging yourself, if you will, by saying, okay, look at me. Look at wonderful me. I did what I set out to do this week.
Yeah. And if you guys want to change those percentages around, like if you say, you know what, Prof, 20% on my death pile, that's too high. Like I don't want more than 10% unlisted items versus my listings. Do it. Make that your number. That's fine. I just wouldn't go higher than 20. I think you go higher than that. The only time you might go higher on that 20% number or 15% if you're over 1,000 listings is if, obviously, if you want to grow. Like if you want to grow your number of listings, you're going to have to buy more than you're selling, right? And list more than you're selling. That's a given. But even there, you've got to be very careful. Like if you're at, say, 1,000 listings and you want to grow to 1,500, it doesn't make sense to go out and buy 500 right away for most people. Like that would take a lot of capital for most people. It's overwhelming to try to list that many in any reasonable amount of time. It would be better to say, all right, I'm at 1,000 listings. I want to grow to 1,500. I'm selling, say, you know, 7 a day. I'm selling 210 a month, roughly. So this month, I'm going to try to I'm going to hit my sourcing goal is going to be 300. I'm going to add 90 more. So even if I sell 210, I'm going to still have 90 more. And that means I got to list 300. So 300 breaks out into roughly 10 a day. So now you've got a specific plan that's measurable, it's attainable. It's not so overwhelming as saying you got to go buy 1,000 more items or 500 more items. It's not going to put such a burden on you from listing. You know, I mean, if you were listing 210 items a month and just maintaining, that's 7 a day. If you get to list 300 items a month, that's 10 a day. It's 3 more listings a day. So that's doable. You can achieve that. It doesn't seem quite like such a stretch. So even if you want to grow, you've got to make sure that your death piles stay, really, really small. And that way, you don't run into this situation where you've got just hundreds of items sitting around and no hope of ever listing them.
Agreed.
Sometimes I look at her like,
I concur.
What's I going to say? So
I think you've said it. The death piles we have started the conquering of death piles.
Yeah. So I think, guys, this video should help you with the death pile issue. If you have it, go back and look at the beginning again. You can see kind of what this formula was and what the definition of a death pile is to us and how you can tackle it.
Yep. And if you've got one, do it. Stop buying. Don't beat yourself up. Let's move forward, move on, and get it done.
All right, Karen, what should they do if they enjoyed this video?
They should subscribe first and foremost, set up reminders so you can join us every time, and like it.
There we go. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. I'm Prof Sales.
And I'm Karen, saying good sales to you.